In the autumn of 1888, the Whitechapel district of London became the hunting ground for the serial killer we now know as Jack the Ripper. Yet, right across town, audiences were flocking to the Lyceum Theatre, packing the house every night to watch a stage adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We tend to think of horror as an escape, but in late 19th century London, as gruesome headlines dominated the evening papers, citizens did not retreat into comforting fantasies. They paid to sit in the dark and watch actors simulate the exact violence occurring right outside the theater doors. The decadent Gothic provided a sociological diagnostic tool engineered to process urban anxiety. It was less about aesthetic thrills and more about building a system to handle the weight of a changing world. Two architects of this framework, Robert Louis Stevenson and Oscar Wilde, mapped the exact contours of 1890s London. They captured the psychological toll of a city transforming faster than its citizens could comprehend. Their monsters are not born from pure imagination. They are direct, measurable outputs of systemic societal data, giving shape to a trauma the public could feel but not articulate. Today, we are living through an identical structural shock. Our environment is being rewritten by the rapid deployment of artificial intelligence. Rapid technological shifts create an epistemic black box. Society suddenly finds itself in a new environment, without the vocabulary or the cognitive models to comprehend its internal logic. To safely process this uncertainty, human psychology demands structural frameworks. We need a way to look at the black box without being paralyzed by it. By analyzing the precise demographic and moral data encoded within 1890s Gothic literature, we can decode our own modern reactions. It explains why, whenever we discuss the AI revolution, we inevitably invoke Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Understanding the historical architecture of fear is the prerequisite for navigating our own contemporary technological dread. London's population accelerated from 1 million in 1801 to 6.2 million by 1901. Compressing into 693 square miles forced extreme wealth and poverty into immediate proximity. Booth's map shows the opulent West End sitting uncomfortably close to the impoverished East End. Class barriers dissolved. This proximity bred a specific psychological terror, the fear of the unknowable neighbor. A citizen walking the gaslit streets was suddenly surrounded by thousands of strangers whose histories, motives, and moral codes were completely opaque. A constant influx of diverse migrant populations further fractured the city's long-standing moral consensus. Beliefs and traditions that had governed communities for generations collapsed under the weight of the metropolis. Extreme physical proximity, stripped of cultural familiarity, inevitably yields a chronic, unavoidable baseline of societal anxiety. This widespread anxiety proved highly profitable. A booming mass print culture, driven by cheap magazines known as penny dreadfuls, monetized the newly urbanized, literate population. This chart shows the actual 1880s homicide rate in England, hovering at a low 1.5 per 100,000 citizens. Yet, analyzing 19th century crime broadsides reveals 85% of reporting focused exclusively on murder. The media dwarfed statistical truth with hyper-concentrated coverage of violent offenses. This established a rigid media feedback loop. The press was not reporting on existing societal threats. They were actively manufacturing the public perception of those threats to drive circulation. This loop fueled intense sensationalism surrounding figures like Jack the Ripper. Daily, graphic updates blurred the lines between actual police investigations and serialized fiction. Neurologically, this constant exposure kept the Victorian public trapped in a continuous, low-level amygdala stress response, anticipating violence around every corner. The data proves that societal fear is decoupled from statistical reality, driven almost entirely by the specific media architecture consumed by the public. Robert Louis Stevenson's strange case of Dr.
Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is the direct, inevitable literary output of this media-induced urban fear. This diagram maps the novel's central duality onto the Freudian structural model of the human psyche. Dr. Jekyll acts as the superego, adhering to social conscience, while Mr. Hyde embodies the uninhibited id, operating entirely on primal urge. When Stevenson describes Hyde committing violence with ape-like fury, The phrasing is exact. It perfectly reflects upper-class pseudoscientific theories regarding poverty and criminality. Social scientists of the era promoted a concept called biological degeneration. They argued the impoverished urban class was physically devolving into a more primitive, inherently criminal species. The true terror of Stevenson's novel is the concept of the aesthetic rasc. Hyde's violence is perpetrated by an esteemed doctor. The story isolates the specific urban fear that an elite, highly genteel exterior can effortlessly conceal a violently destructive reality. The Jekyll and Hyde framework allowed the Victorian public to safely categorize and process chaotic, invisible threats of urban classism through an understandable fictional proxy. Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray takes this diagnostic approach further, offering a meticulous case study in modern moral relativity and urban decadence. Lord Henry Wotton enters the narrative as the personified corrupting influence of the modern metropolis itself. He challenges traditional beliefs and systematically drags a naive protagonist into a life of pure sensation. To manage this unchecked hedonism, Wilde introduces the supernatural painting. It functions as a literal containment vessel for the real-world pollution of 1890s London. Dorian maintains a pristine physical avatar in high society, completely insulated from consequence, while the extreme decay, violence, and poverty of his actions are channeled entirely into the canvas. The decadent Gothic provided a necessary psychological sandbox. It allowed the public to safely explore the total moral decay of their environment from behind the comfortable insulation of fiction. We can transpose this exact sociological mechanism from the physical urbanization of the 1890s to the digital expansion of our current era. We now inhabit the infosphere, a sprawling digital metropolis where human interaction, commerce, and identity are entirely centralized. The Victorian fear of the unknowable neighbor has evolved. Instead of a mysterious stranger on a foggy street, the modern public fears opaque, black box algorithms whose decision-making processes are completely hidden from view. The exponential development and integration of AI mimics the exact structural shock and density trauma caused by 19th century population growth. We are surrounded by systems we rely on, but cannot fully understand. While the underlying technology has radically changed, the human neurological response to sudden, total environmental transformations remains identical across centuries. This explains why Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is the specific, reflexive framework invoked by modern society to process artificial intelligence. Contemporary ethical dilemmas surrounding AI, specifically creator hubris, a lack of strict accountability, and the race for technological supremacy, map perfectly onto Victor Frankenstein's scientific missteps. The enduring motif of the unknowable creation serves as a vital mental tool. It allows us to manage our existential dread regarding technologies that can learn, adapt, and operate independently of their programmers. Frankenstein performs the exact same cathartic function for the AI revolution that Jekyll and Hyde performed for Victorian urban anonymity. These fictional frameworks actively prevent societal paralysis. They assign a recognizable shape and narrative structure to abstract, systemic threats, making them something we can study rather than something we simply fear. Literature serves as the essential sociological laboratory where we construct the mental models required to survive new realities.